for other people that are going to join us. Okay, looks like we've started recording, so that's amazing. What I'm gonna do now is have our, I'm gonna introduce myself, and we'll have our two amazing law mamas introduce themselves. And, or actually maybe we can skip them and then maybe have, since we only have a few people for now, have you guys just kind of introduce yourself very quickly and why you're taking this masterclass. So that way, SA and Maria can, you know, maybe even be more focused with some of their presentation this afternoon. So I'll go ahead and start. My name is Blessing Adesina, and I am the founder and CEO of Mother Honestly. I am a chemical engineer by trade, but I wear many hats. So I was just talking to folks that were here earlier about how tired I am because I am juggling maybe 5-10 balls right now. But super exciting. I'm not complaining. I'm fortunate that I have ideas, and I'm also fortunate I have amazing friends and networks and coworkers that are able to support me. So I have a 10-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm also currently pregnant with my third. And it's been a crazy couple of weeks. So we're glad to be able to join you guys today to hear more. This class is really for you know, I like to say that it's also for me because I don't know much about, you know, this realm at all. So having to have other moms that are in this space share their knowledge and their wisdom with us, I think is amazing. So thank you so much, SA and Maria, for volunteering your time. I'll turn it over to Christine All, our Executive Director. She's on the line. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, ladies. I'm Kristen Hall. As Blessing mentioned, I am the Executive Director of Mother Honestly, and excited to see today's masterclass, something I'm really thrilled about that we continue to offer. I am a program manager in my day job, and then similar to Blessing, juggle a couple different opportunities as well. I have a 1-year-old, pardon me, I have one 3-year-old firecracker of a son, but excited to hear more about kind of the business formation, and then as well, because I have a few friends that are going through divorces, you know, how to help support and continue to learn more in that space.
Perfect. Diana?
Basically, I am a postpartum doula, and I am branching off to be by myself and run my own business. So basically, I'm interested in hearing all the things. Just give me all the information, feed it to me, put it in an IV. I don't care. I would just love to know more information, to be the entrepreneur, to conquer the world and serve all the moms that need all the baby support that I can offer to them.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing. Karina, are you on?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so yeah, I am at the store and with my baby, so I'll be trying to listen. How are you guys doing? You're just doing an introduction?
Yes, just a quick introduction, who you are and what you do.
Well, I am Karina Baldwin. I am the founder of Little High Flyers. We are here today. And I just wanted to log in and see. I've never logged in into one of your classes, so I'm excited about it. But basically, I opened a store 2 years ago in Midtown Detroit, and we have organic children's clothing and accessories, and it's been going well, and I'm interested in this class.
Perfect. All right. This doesn't have a name. 989.
Oh, it's Stephanie.
Okay. Hi, Stephanie. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Yes. I'm Stephanie Rose, and I'm also a program manager, and I'm home office, and I'm also starting a side business that I want to see where that goes. So I'm most interested in like how to protect your intellectual material, so like copywriting and stuff like that. And then so that's my primary. And then I also have 2 boys, 2 and 4, and live in Auburn Hills. And I'm in the car, so I will be on mute, but I had to pick up my bees today. So I'm a multitasking mama on that front.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. Glad you could join us. Nicole?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Nicole Sherbarth, and I am, well, right now I'm actually working at the hospital clinic, so I'm on my lunch break. But
Yay!
I also am a recreation aquatic therapist, and I have my own businesses with that. And I also own a swim school, which is a Montessori swim school. And I'm here to listen to Essie, make sure I'm on the right track. And oh, just like you, Blessing. Well, this doesn't sound good, but I'm juggling lots of balls too. But maybe my sons. I have 4 boys, so I guess they're juggling their own. Hopefully. So.
Nice to have you, Nicole. Okay, I see Kate. She just took off with a baby. Victoria.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Washington. I am a co-founder and the Chief Operations Officer of an edible cookie dough manufacturer called Detroit Dough. I'm very excited to be on the call today. The intent is just to learn just what's out there. So we have successfully gotten our trademark for our logos, but we have so much more to learn, and I'm looking forward to taking that back to the team. So thank you for having me.
All right, Kate, do you want to introduce yourself if the baby allows? Hi, Kate. We cannot hear you. You're still on mute.
Okay. Hi. How are you guys? So I'm Kate Cagle. I am a photographer and a graphic designer, and this particular masterclass, definitely speaks to copyright, intellectual property, and making sure that my stuff is protected, as well as for my clients and for me, kind of both ways. So I'm interested to see where this masterclass goes. I have a 4-month-old and a newly 3-year-old. So, and I work from home mostly. And yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Kate, for joining us. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll introduce Essay first, and then introduce Maria, and that way Maria can dive in. She goes first. So Essay, can you introduce yourself and what you do?
Hi, everybody. My name is Essie 2K. I'm an attorney, and I'm the founder and owner of the 2K firm. That is T-U-K-E. Everyone always tries to say the number 2 and K. No, it's the 2K firm. We are a full-service divorce family law firm. We also do civil litigation and other types of things, but 80-90% is divorce and family law. I've been an attorney for 15 years. And I've owned this practice for 10 years, and it's my baby. And we really do focus on customer service and getting to the bottom line with as little drama and nonsense as possible. And you think, how is it possible in divorce? I promise you it is. We divorce whisperers. We want to get it done where you can get a fair price and also not feel like your family's torn apart, because ultimately you still are family. You're just not together anymore if you have kids. So I look forward to answering questions.
Awesome. All right, Maria, can you introduce yourself, and then we can dive into your presentation first.
Sure thing. So I'm Maria Spear-Alice. Spear IP is my law practice, and it focuses on intellectual property, on internet law, and on contracts. I am originally from the Detroit area. I left to go to law school in New York, and then lived in Nashville, Tennessee for 8 years, and then came back here last year. So I'm the mom of one 8-month-old boy, and working Spear IP when he allows me.
Perfect. All right, let me know when you want me to advance the screen, and we can get started.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, perfect.
So this is just kind of an outline of what I will discuss. And I think there's maybe one more section under intellectual property. Yeah, so first we'll talk about business entity, what it is, and kind of what the purpose of having a business entity is. We'll talk about intellectual property, my favorite. So we'll talk about trademark and trade dress, copyright and design patent, And then we'll talk about contracts and kind of go through just some common contracts for entrepreneurs and small businesses. Okay, so business entities first. Go ahead there, okay. So advantages and disadvantages to forming a business entity. I always say, not to start at the bottom, but you want to weigh how much liability are you actually at risk for, and does that risk outweigh the cost? It's sometimes kind of a fine line between hobby and business, but I always say if it's a hobby, if you're creating something and giving it to friends and family, maybe you're not ready for the business entity yet, but once you're launching, you're making money, it's a true business, then it's time to start thinking about a business entity. So the advantages, of course, are limiting liability. It protects your personal assets from your business assets. What does that mean in plain English? Essentially, if you don't form a business entity, you're kind of by default a sole proprietor. So if there's a claim against you, knock on wood, if someone has an issue, wants to take you to court, etc., they can reach into your personal assets in order to get the damages that they're wanting. So your house, your car, etc., your personal bank accounts. If you form a business entity and you kind of follow those, the steps that you need to follow, then that is like an entire different entity. It's a different person. It has its own bank account. It has its own assets separate from your personal assets. And so long as you follow those formalities required by the business entity that you choose, then they can't reach into your personal side. They can only look at your business assets. So advantages, limiting liability. You can allocate ownership and governance. So maybe as it advances more, you want investors, or you want silent partner. Someone might put up money in your business, but you can kind of separate out, okay, who actually owns and can vote on business decisions, and who just has a monetary interest, who's just getting a piece of the pie financially, but they might not get any say in the governance of the business. Separation of church and state, keeping your personal finances separate, and then there are tax advantages, which will be different for everybody. And then disadvantages, there are some filing fees, although Michigan's a lot better than Tennessee, where I used to practice. In Tennessee, the renewal for an LLC is $300 a year. I think in Michigan it's maybe $50. So yay. And then you do have to keep up with certain formalities, keep the bank account separate. If you choose a corporation, you have to kind of keep meeting minutes. And failure to follow the rules could result in a loss of protection. So again, you just kind of want to follow those formalities. Okay. Next slide, Blessing. Okay, cool. So options, sole proprietorship, we kind of touched on. It's if you haven't formed a business entity, you are a sole proprietorship. It's basically, you can have a DBA and be a sole proprietor, but you are just you kind of doing business without having formed any business entity. A partnership is essentially the same thing because you don't technically have to file anything to create a partnership, but it's with more than one person. It's more than one person kind of in a joint venture or business together. And then there's limited liability company, and there's corporation. All right, intellectual property. Go ahead to the next one. All right, so a trademark, which you're probably all familiar with, is a name or symbol used to identify a brand. So there's the word Nike. There's without any kind of stylization, just the brand name Nike. There's the word Nike in that particular Nike font, and then there's the Nike swoosh. Those are each their own separate trademarks. Whoops. I'm going to keep chatting. So sounds can also be trademarks. The NBC chime, which I don't even have to sing because it will pop into your head as soon as I say NBC chime, that those three notes, that's technically a trademark because it kind of identifies It's a source identifier for NBC. Sometimes a source identifier is this subconscious thing based on experience or reputation. Essentially, your trademark is a source identifier, but also a specific quality that your customers have with your brand. And the primary focus of the Lanham Act, which kind of governs trademarks, is that it's consumer minded. We want to protect consumers from confusion between brands, because then the consumer won't be able to make an accurate decision if there's more than one brand kind of swimming in the same business market. Okay. So a common law trademark is basically an unregistered trademark. In the US, which is a little bit different from other countries, the trademark rights go to the first person or business to use a trademark, not the first person to file or register the trademark. So you have common law trademark rights in your trademark the minute you begin using it in connection with a product or a service. So in other words, you don't have to register it in order to have rights. You have rights when you begin doing business under that brand name. The kind of downside to a common law or unregistered trademark is that you're likely to be limited geographically, so to wherever you're actually using it. Whereas if you register it, you kind of have protection in all of the United States. Go ahead. So some of the benefits of trademark registration using the fancy circle R symbol. You can only use that symbol if you have a registered trademark. Getting attorney's fees in some circumstances if you're in a trademark infringement situation, asking for triple damages, the ability to file in federal court, which is huge, protection throughout the United States, which I mentioned, and it creates a public record of your use and ownership of the trademark. So someone can't say, oops, I didn't know that you existed. Okay. So for registering a trademark, this is kind of a breakdown of the application process. First, you file the application. You have to include the date of first use, so the date that you first began using the brand in connection with your product or service. You include a specimen, which can be a website screenshot. It can be a picture of your product with a hang tag on it. For a use-based app, you file a specimen with the application. If you're filing based on an intent to use, meaning you haven't started using it yet, but you're going to launch at some point in the next couple of years, then you just file the specimen later. After you file, nobody at the trademark office looks at it for about 3 or 4 months, and then the examining attorney basically does their own trademark search in the trademark office records to see, okay, is there anything else out there that's confusingly similar to your brand in your market? Then it's published for this 30-day period where anyone that feels like if they were to be damaged by your trademark, if it were registered, they can file an opposition. And if nobody files, then it moves on to registration. And the intent to use app, as I mentioned, is if you're not using the application yet, it's just a little bit different in terms of when you file that specimen. So I will always do a trademark search before filing an application, unless one has already been done. But basically, it's about a 4-hour process where you pull from the trademark office database, but also common law marks, because remember, trademark rights, you don't have to have a registered trademark to have trademark rights. So you look for similar marks. You see in the trademark office, how have similar marks been treated? You know, have they been rejected for this reason or that? And is there anybody out there that has a trademark that kind of has priority over you in terms of have they been using their trademark longer than you in your market? And, you know, can I use this is a little bit of a different question than is this mark protectable? A lot of times a geographic mark is tougher to protect, or a descriptive mark. I would always use, you know, Detroit Coffee Company. That's pretty generic, because if you're in Detroit and you have a coffee company, not generic, descriptive, then it's harder to, it's kind of a First Amendment free speech issue. It's hard to stop someone in Detroit from describing themselves as a Detroit coffee company. But if you've been using that name exclusively for a certain period of time, then you can kind of earn protectability. If you think about like Sports Authority or Bed Bath & Beyond, those are all very descriptive brands that over time kind of got that recognition, that source identifying factor. And then there's the spectrum of trademark strength. So I know I'm going quickly, but I'm going quickly because I know you only have a certain amount of time. So the spectrum of trademark strength is basically your most protectable marks and your least protectable. So least protectable would be completely generic. Coffee is a generic word for coffee. Descriptive describes some type of element in your business. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there is an arbitrary trademark. So an ordinary term that is kind of arbitrarily paired with a product or service. Apple is a good example of that. Apple is an ordinary word, but used in connection with computers is kind of an arbitrary pairing. And then there's fanciful, which is the most protectable, has the most protection. And Spotify is kind of my go-to example. It's a made-up word. So it has a lot of protection because there's no kind of underlying meaning, and it's very recognizable. How am I doing on time, Blessing?
We're doing good.
Okay. Okay, so trademark infringement. Oops. So basically, you want to look at, are the marks similar, and not just similar in spelling. You can have a different spelling and still sound similar. You can have a similar connotation and similar products or services. Likelihood of confusion is what you're looking at. Is a consumer likely to be confused by the existence of these two brands? And unfair competition is kind of related to trademark in that way. Examples of infringing or unfair activities. I'll use Etsy as an example because, you know, a lot of folks start with Etsy when they're starting a business, but, you know, you might use a logo or a label similar to somebody else's. Sometimes people will use another brand name as a tag on their Etsy products. That's a no-no. Or in keywords for a website, using a hashtag with someone else's brand to draw customers to your brand, also a no-no. So trade dress, trademark's fancy sister. It can be a distinctive product packaging. It can be a distinctive product design. But the key is it has to be non-functional and it has to be source identifying. So it can't just be something decorative. And on the next slide is my favorite example of trade dress. So Louboutin with the red soles, that was they were kind of in a legal battle about it because Yves Saint Laurent had a red shoe with a red sole. And there was kind of this question of, well, can Louboutin really claim protection in that red sole? Well, the court ultimately, and there's one more little bullet point there, but they ultimately said yes, because of all of the evidence Louboutin had that this red sole, people recognize that red sole as a Louboutin shoe. The kind of caveat to that is, well, if it's a plain, if the top of the red is shoe, the upper portion is red, then the red sole doesn't really have that source identifying piece to it. But because the red sole on a different colored shoe is so tied to the Louboutin brand, they said, yes, there is trade dress protection in that brand. Okay. So copyright. Copyright protects creative works. So music and video and artwork and all of the things that we kind of traditionally think of as creative, but also downloadable PDF or literature or e-course content, that's all also creative content that's protectable under copyright law. And an author has rights to his or her creative work as soon as it's created or fixed in some kind of tangible medium. If it's just an idea floating in your head, or if it's a pure idea, then it's not protectable under copyright law yet. And you don't have to register it with the Copyright Office in order to have some protection. The moment it is fixed in that tangible medium, you have some rights to it. And the owner of a copyright has the exclusive right to copy, distribute, perform, display, or otherwise exploit or use the copyrighted work, unless there's some kind of signed document to the contrary. So again, registration isn't required, but it does have benefits if it was registered within 5 years of its publication. And so that's published kind of in the traditional, literature sense, or it's kind of offered to the public. Then you have a presumption of ownership. And that essentially means that if there were a lawsuit, you wouldn't have to prove that you own it. The other side would have to prove that you don't own it. So that's a little bit less of a headache if you ever do end up in court over copyright infringement. It entitles the owner to register work with U.S. Customs. It is a prerequisite to bringing a copyright infringement lawsuit. So you would have to file if you were to bring a copyright infringement lawsuit. And there are huge remedies. Remedies are kind of something that you ask for in a lawsuit in exchange for the damage that's been done to you. And the biggest remedy for having registered copyright is the potential to recover attorney's fees. So if you win a copyright infringement lawsuit, you can ask for your attorney's fees. And even if you never intend to go to court, it's a huge thing to say in a cease and desist letter, we have a registered copyright, because then they know if I have to file a lawsuit over this, you have to pay my legal fees, and nobody wants to do that. So there's kind of that benefit to registering a copyright. And there are also statutory damages that can be up to $30,000 per work, or $150,000 if it's willful or intentional infringement. Okay. Copyright registration, I'm going to kind of give it the broad strokes, but basically it can be done online. You have to have the type of work. So is it a work of literature? Is it work of musical work? The author's name, date it was published. If there's anything excluded, so if you're using stock photos that you don't own, you have to exclude those and kind of note that in the application that they're excluded. And then you upload a deposit copy, so a copy of that work. And then you can include multiple works in a single application. One example would be a music album. That's a collection of individual songs, which might have different authors, but an album can be registered altogether. And then, sorry, I know I'm going quickly, blessing. Okay, and then next slide. So design patent. Design patent protects the design of a particular article. It doesn't protect the function. That's a utility patent, which is kind of the patent that we all think of for inventions. It protects the design. It has to be non-functional. It has to be non-obvious. And it has to be a new design. The process usually takes over a year, which is longer than the life of a lot of clothing or accessory lines, which are often seasonal. And that's really, fashion is really one of the main industries where you'll see design patents come up. If you have a truly unique design for a handbag, then you would go to design patent for that protection. And then we have contracts. So some common contracts for entrepreneurs. First, you've got confidentiality agreement, or NDA. A lot of people use NDA interchangeably with other types of contracts, but a pure NDA, non-disclosure agreement, or confidentiality agreement, protects confidential information. And an NDA is only as good as the definition of confidential information in that agreement. If you can't determine from reading that paragraph of the agreement what confidential information is, or if everything under the sun is supposed to be confidential, if there's an issue, then that NDA is going to be struck down, or at least revised, because first of all, not everything is confidential, but second, the recipient of the confidential information, whether it's you or whether it's the person that you're giving the agreement to, has to be able to determine what confidential information is. A lot of times, sometimes business practices don't allow for this, but a lot of times I'll say, why don't you have as a term in that agreement that anything stamped with confidential is confidential. Then it's very clear what's considered confidential and what isn't. Contracts with contractors and contributors. And under this umbrella, I'd kind of include a work for hire agreement or intellectual property assignment agreement. So contractors and contributors usually are not employees, meaning they ordinarily are the default owner of any creative work that they create for you. So if it's a photographer coming in to do a branding or lifestyle shoot, if it's a logo designer, by default, unless they're an employee of yours, a true employee of yours, if they're a contractor, then they own that content unless you get an assignment or copyright assignment in writing. So that's, yeah.
I'm sorry, I just had a quick question. It's Diana.
Yeah.
Would that be under 1099?
Yes, 1099 is a contractor. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Just checking. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Good question. Yeah. So again, kind of a common misconception is just because if I pay somebody to create something for me, whether it's a web designer or a logo or a photographer or whatever it is, if I pay that person, then I own it. But that is a myth. That is not true. I am out there to try and dispel that myth for you. A copyright transfer must be in writing in order to be valid. So yeah, so that's where contracts with contractors and contributors are important. They're also important to kind of, to the extent they're creating things for you, to have kind of a schedule so that you know what to expect. The whole purpose of a contract, in theory, is to make sure both parties are on the same page, right? You know what your expectations are, and those expectations are laid out so that you're not having to sift through text messages or emails to try and figure out, okay, when was this supposed to be done? What did we agree on in terms of payment and when payment is due? And those kinds of things. And on the related to that is the next bullet point, which is service contracts. So as a business owner, having a contract for your business services that will lay out for your client what exactly you are doing. So there's no question, is she doing this? Is she doing that? Here are the services I'm providing. Here's how much it costs. Here's a schedule of payment. Here's when I'm delivering this to you and this to you and this to you. Here's who owns what intellectual property, terms like that, to make clear, to make your arrangement clear and to make it all in one place and one hopefully easy to read contract. Website policies, this is more on the tech and internet side, but your terms of use, your privacy policy, your copyright policy, those things are essentially a contract between you and your users. So if you create an app, that also applies. The terms of use govern the user's use of your platform. A privacy policy governs your use of personal information of your users, private information. You might remember it was almost a year ago when everybody was sending out emails on updates to their privacy policies. That was because of a European law, the GDPR, which is coming into effect last May. So everybody was updating their privacy policies because it applied not just to businesses in the EU, but anyone processing data from users in the EU. So it kind of turned privacy law up on its head a little bit, but essentially telling users where they're collecting information, how they're using your information, and what to do if they want to either remove their information or see what information you're collecting on them. And then an IP policy is kind of the third website policy. And that, the purpose of a copyright policy is essentially, and you'll see it on Instagram, you'll see it on YouTube, you'll see it on anywhere where the user can upload content. And the copyright policy provides for that instant takedown. So if I'm a photographer and someone else posts one of my photos that I own to Instagram, you go straight to that copyright policy to submit a takedown request. And so long as you, the operator, so Instagram in this example, has a copyright policy that complies with the law, then they are absolved from any immunity, even though it happened on their platform. And then the last is influencer contracts, and that's a huge thing. I just watched the Fyre Festival documentaries. Holy moly. So influencer contracts are a kind of a new thing because a crackdown came after the whole Fyre Festival thing. But basically, it's an agreement with the influencer to make sure that what they're doing for you on social media complies with the law. That's it.
Thank you so much, Maria. That was very, oh my goodness. I feel like I've learned a lot. It was kind of like a mini. I'll send out the slides as well as the video for you guys. If you want to, go through that again. I know she went through a lot. Thank you so much. Esty, it's on for our second half. I feel like this is a very important topic because I have been through this before. And I know, nobody wants to talk about it because, nobody's praying for it. Nobody wants it. But the reality is 50% of all marriages end in divorce. And for me, I don't even think about it as divorce. I'm thinking about it as what are the things that I need to know so that I can help other moms that may be in that situation, go through that in a more effective way. So, Esther, thank you for joining us. Walk us through it. Hello. Oh, you're on mute. All right. Okay, perfect.
Sorry. As you said, it can be a very painstaking process. There's a lot of shame and.
Your volume is a little low. Not sure what happened. I know I could hear you properly before. Can everybody hear okay? Maybe it's just me.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah, perfect.
All right, let me go a little closer. All right, so as I was saying is that divorce can be a very emotional process for some people. So they are putting it off, they'll delay, and they'll be afraid home privately or talking with their friends to be afraid to seek information because they're thinking, one, the cost is too high, and then there's also facing the reality of what it might be. But it's good to have some information to frame what it looks like. So if you are considering it or a friend is, you can put them in the right proper mindset to move forward. So let's get started. Next slide. All right, so should I get a divorce? I say, are you in your feelings or have you really reached irreconcilable differences? A very personal question that I can't answer or no one really can for you. However, I always say, have you attempted some counseling? I ask that question because sometimes people are just really angry. There's a big fight, a big blow up, so they want to just come in. That person I don't take so seriously. I listen to their issues, but I know that things can change with emotions. When someone comes in and they're steely and they're focused, I'm like, okay, they've been through a lot, and generally they were ready a long time ago, and usually they come in, it's been a long time coming. So again, have you tried some counseling, looked into ways to reconcile? I don't require or request it, but I bring it up. Children, are you currently pregnant? If you have children, there are a lot of considerations as to custody, parenting time, child support. When is the child? Where's the child going to be? Is someone going to take the child and run before there's a filing? This happens sometimes. Can they move to a different state? All these considerations come up. And if you're currently pregnant, there's always a question: is the child of the father, of the spouse? Because it's presumed by the law, if you're pregnant and you're married, that your husband is that father. And if the child is somebody else's and you're married, that father has essentially no rights unless your husband decides he will let him. It's pretty crazy. There's some crazy cases where an actual biological father could not parent his child because of this circumstance. So that's a consideration as well. But it can be dealt with as long as it's upfront. We can get paternity testing and figure that out. There's a tension in the home. The number one question, because if you guys are living together in the home and you guys are not and there's all kinds of energies that are negative, the first thing I want to do is separate the parties, which means how quickly can we get into separate residences and get an interim agreement for sharing the child or children where there's not going to be police called and nabbing kids from daycare, which happens, and it's never a good idea. Never a good idea. Better idea to go ahead and get a plan attempt to work it out or go to court and get a court order. And you can get emergency hearings if someone nabbed your child from daycare or school with no court order or permission. Financial considerations, are you working? Are you not working? Is he making more money? Are you making more money? Do you guys have assets together? Is your mortgage behind? Is all the bills in your name? So these are all kinds of things you have to really figure out so that when you come to the attorney, you have a clear understanding of where you stand. Because we're not mind readers. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know what he may have stole or she may have stole. I don't know all that's happened. So I always say what's most relevant usually is the last year or two of the situation. If you're married for 20 years, the court is not going to go back 15 years to when they cheated on you and you forgave them. It just doesn't matter anymore. You forgave them, it's over. It's more about what's going on now, a snapshot of where you are now and what you want to divide. So you want to definitely know your numbers, how much you're making, how much he's making, get some documentation, gather it. Prior marriages. That's an important thing to think about, because are there prior children? Are there prior support orders for spousal support, child support that come into play in your new divorce? Is the other party, were they prior married? Did they get a cut of their pension or retirement account so that the number you're seeing there as their account really isn't their account, because the wife has an entitlement, the prior wife has an entitlement to half of it. You don't know. So these are things you definitely want to know. And if there's a prior marriage, I like to see the judgment just to make sure that there's nothing that might affect this new marriage and divorce. Size of the estate. That matters, because if you have an estate that's just like, okay, we have a house, couple cars, a few IRAs, and that's it, that's relatively normal, not too difficult to divide. But when we have one party owning a business where maybe they're a part owner of the business and one spouse has not been involved at all, so she has no idea what's going on with the money. However, there's a lot going on. It's a much more complex consideration. We partner with financial divorce advisors. We partner with business evaluators, actuaries. There's something called certified divorce planners. I actually go to a school for that. And so we have large estates with larger assets or more complex divisions. We always get the experts involved to help break it down, because it's always good to know that it's good to invest a little money for expertise than to find out that you gave up the farm and you could have had a more entitlement. So we always will link with others if necessary, but we have a lot in-house that we can work with to figure out how to get your stuff from combined to divided. Infidelity. Michigan is a no-fault state, which means when you're filing for a divorce, you don't have to prove fault or even accuse fault of the other side to move forward with your divorce. So often people come in and they're very upset. Infidelity happens all the time. It's not something that I get up in arms about, and I realize it's a strong emotional attachment to that for the person. And I think it's real. You have to deal with that pain, but that pain is not something that can help you in the divorce, because the emotions scuttle it all up. The only thing it will guarantee is to prolong it. It won't necessarily mean he's going to give you more. I recently had a case where there was a husband who had a long-time affair, and he happens to be my client, and it came up in the divorce. And she was trying to make it a really huge deal. I mean, she wanted to subpoena every website and get information. And so I said, look, if there was some expenditures related to that, we can discuss that. But I was like, you don't get to, ask every question under the sun, because it's not all relevant. And so ultimately we worked it out where, because of certain factors, she did get a little bit extra. But even if you go to court at trial with an affair, you're looking at maybe instead of 50-50, I don't know, 55-45 at best. I've seen cases where there was really bad domestic violence and they did 60-40. So don't think an affair is going to change the game. The personal hurt you have to work out through other means, so don't get too wrapped up in that when dividing your stuff. The quicker your divorce is over, the better everyone is. Long divorces are just expensive and more painful, and you hate each other forever. And then abuse, mental, physical, financial. I always do that check-in. It's in my intake. Is there any DV? Because it changes the way we shape the case. If someone, because people allege domestic violence a lot. They do so for advantages. They do so, I think it's a really shady thing to do. I would never do that with any of my clients or my cases, because there are real victims out there that need being addressed. So when you go in there with all of these puffed up things, like just this morning, I was at CPS with a client of mine, a male client of mine, because his baby's mom is so angry at him because he left her, that she alleged all these horrific things that are not true. So now she's trying to get him put in jail, lose his job because he moved on. So you have to fight against these horrific allegations, with CPS. And she got traction because she's a woman, came in crying, but it really always angers me. And so I vigorously will defend this man to trial to protect him, because I looked at it objectively. This is a man who's taking care of his children, and you shouldn't have to go through that just because you're breaking up with someone. Kids should not have to go through that. So if there's any abuse, mental, physical, or financial, we will discuss it and address it and have a game plan moving forward on how we make sure you keep you protected physically, first and foremost. A PPO can be requested even by yourself without an attorney at no cost. PPOs are free always. You can go down there. It's a long process, clear the day, fill out paperwork, affidavit, you submit it, you get a response back, and you can get a PPO the very same day. You have to have allegations of, obviously, abuse. If it's a person that you're in a romantic relationship with, all you need is one incident and it's enough. But it has to be a threat of violence, actual violence, or something serious, not just he called me, a couple times and blew me up. And there's a gray area of harassment. So if someone's incessantly texting you, okay, 20 texts, not good. But I've seen cases where 500 texts came through in a day. We brought that information, that was enough for harassment in a PPO. So it's all about case by case, but that will be addressed and it needs to make sure that you are safe first and foremost before we get into the money and other things. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you get to the point where it's like, I think it's time, like, what should I do from there? You have to understand what you've got. So living arrangements, who's staying, who's going, what are we doing with our budget? I always try to figure out, I ask my client, what do you want to do? Do you want to keep the house and stay with the kids? Do you want to move out, find somewhere else? Everyone's different considerations. When we bought the house, is there equity? Do I have family support? My mom's down the street, so it's easy. I have no family in the state, so I need to have some time to get money, or I need him to help me get some money to move out. And there's all types of things that can be worked out, but I figure if there's resources to move and you can actually sustain both residences in the meantime while we're working out the divorce, I say do so. Because the hardest thing to do is to keep unraveling the tensions that rise every night. You talk to your client, you figure stuff out, we send documents back and forth to attorneys, they go home and poof. It's a whole new set of things in the morning because someone didn't put the dishes in, or someone picked up the kid late and they're bickering, and now they don't have any investment to work it out. They're just gonna make it really ugly. So I definitely see if we can move each other away from each other early, great. If there isn't a lot of tension, you can stay together, save some money in the meantime by sharing bills until someone has to move out. And time frames. Do we start now? Should we wait? Sometimes it's good to wait. So say if you are married to a man who has a very high income and he gets bonused out in June, let's wait till June. Let's wait till that bonus comes in so we have this bonus opportunity, because you'd be surprised what people do financially to, screw each other over, which is not something that, you can go back and recapture, but I like to get to it before the money's already dispersed. So that's a big thing there. So with kids also, if you're going to be moving away from one another, who is going to be having the kids on Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Who's going to be, are we doing 50-50? Is one person primary? Does one parent work a tremendous amount of hours? Can they even accomplish what they're asking for? So you really have to get clear on what you want to see in terms of a schedule. Because of course you have to figure out custody. There's legal custody, which is who's making decisions. School, religious, medical, that's something generally shared unless there's severe mental illness, domestic violence, or some type of incapacity that makes one parent incapable. Or if it's so bad you can't get along, you keep going back to court, the court has taken away legal custody from one parent and given it all to the other because they just wanted to keep fighting. So that can happen, but generally it's shared joint. And then there's physical custody. Where is the child physically going to be days and nights? And so a lot of times we have joint custody is, it's more popular these days than before. When I first started 15 years ago, a lot of these judges would say, moms take care of kids, dads go to work. It's just not that way anymore, and it's just not really fair to look at it that way. Every case, the court must look at the best interests of that child or children to see what's best. So it means maybe both parents may have been very well involved, and I think if both parents are involved, they should both stay involved. So there's ways we can do every other weekend. If someone basically wants that, we can do week on, week off. And another big factor with kids in the exchanges is the age. What we're talking about for infants and 1-year-olds is very different than an 8-year-old. And also very different than a 13-year-old or a 16 or 17-year-old. Because quite frankly, there's no age that a minor stops being a minor. But when you have a child that's 16, 17 years old and they're very resistant to going with another parent, the court will give it more weight. It's not the determining factor, but it'll give it more weight. And they want to know why. If it's just simply dad makes me do homework and mom lets me play Xbox all day, that's not good enough. But sometimes it's that, there's one parent and I don't get along. It's really harsh and I will run away. I've had those cases where they forced the issue, kid ran away. The girl ran away and she ended up getting raped while she was in some halfway house. And it was a bad situation. She was hooked on drugs. And so that was a really messy case, but it didn't start there. The case came to me late stage. The girl was about 15 when it came to me, and the problems existed for about 10 years prior. So you really can't fix the family completely, but you can set things in place where at least your client and the other side see the child is safe, and no one's being threatened, and all of that. So that's the kid stuff. A lot of things to think about there. Financial documents. Gather your information. Again, your attorney is not a mind reader. I give a client a list of things that we're going to need from you, which include bank statements, investments accounts, retirement accounts, pensions, IRAs, 401ks, annuities, because all these things are marital assets if they've been accrued during the marriage. That makes it marital. So something you had something prior to the message, something prior to the marriage, then it's probably going to be yours, and otherwise it might not be. So anyways, all these are lists of things you want to go ahead and pull together and understand. Next slide, please. Okay, the divorce process. In Michigan, the quickest you can be divorced is 60 days after filing. So even if we agree on everything tomorrow, we file today, agree on everything tomorrow, we have to wait out that time frame. But very typically in my practice, I work on settling the case from day one because, let's go ahead and get it done. But you have to file the summons and complaint in the county you live in, and that starts a divorce action. Your divorce has been filed. So if you're ever talking to someone and saying, or sometimes people are dating someone and it's like, he filed a divorce. I say, go check the county that he lives in and look online to see if he really filed. Because saying you filed and actually filing is not the same thing. It's public record when a divorce is filed. You can look it up. You gotta serve the other side, get an answer, and both parties, once it's at issue, we can go to mediation and pay the mediator, or we can work it out together. Again, settling the case early saves everyone time and money if you're able to do so. But if there's serious issues, we have to litigate, so we can attempt mediation or go to trial if need be. There's a 6-month waiting period when you have children, but that's very typically waived. So we ask the court to waive it because you're living apart and working together and have an agreement. There's no problem doing that. And then finalization. We get a judgment of divorce, which is your contract. It addresses spousal support, property issues, custody, parenting time, debts, who claims the kids on taxes, insurances, all of that's addressed. You guys sign off on it. Once a judge signs that document, you're officially divorced. Next one. This is a quick graphic to show how often the big blue is settlement. Most cases settle and only very few go to trial, and usually it's very serious issues. And so don't think, okay, I'm going to court, the judge is going to hear all that's happened to me for 25 years. The judge honestly doesn't care. The judge has a huge docket, and they want to go to golf and lunch. So they want you to figure out your case. You only see the judge when you have a problem child case. The judge knows you, your face, and your case name. Not a good thing. You're there too often. Next slide, please. And things to remember. I said emotions are real, and they're healthy to have them, and you have to go through it, because I've been divorced. It was excruciating, and it's the kind of thing where I'm a better divorce attorney after, because I get it. And I went to therapy and worked my stuff out. And you can't bring it to work. You can't bring it to your kids because they need you to be strong, particularly if their dad is not all together. And a lot of times, women, we generally keep it together even when we're breaking down, and men sometimes really fall apart. So, you need to find your support groups. Unchecked emotions in divorce can really make things a lot harder and longer. So control it, let your attorney deal with the actual property and stuff and not the squabbles. And I do a lot of no drama divorces. I can basically unplug that stuff really easily, and also diffuse tensions with attorneys, because I just don't engage. I focus on what's necessary to get done, and let's get it done. And I file a motion when necessary, but I don't file tons of motion, because when I'm filing it, I have a reason to. I probably will get fees because you made me. Again, we can do it amicably. If we can, let's try to, because you have kids together. You may can't stand him for cheating on you, or vice versa, or rooting your credit. you have to put that to the side and realize he's still the father of your child. You need to co-parent. So I say, look, if you're thinking about it, come and get the information and do a consultation and understand where you are, do some planning, even if you're not ready to fully go there or pay the money. But I'm telling you, your best life can be after that divorce and when you're free, and I can be a testament to that. So, I'm available for consultations. I have a scheduler on my website, and I would love to answer questions if anybody have any regarding divorce. Just some information about me. So, been around for a while, but yeah, divorce has been a huge part, and also custody changes after divorce.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Asa. This is definitely, and I have some questions because I have been, married before and divorced, and sometimes I get, some text messages. I'm supposed to be the one claiming taxes. I'm like, it says that nowhere on this document.
These are things to be in there, and that's why I really have a very thorough document. I want that document to carry you 5-10 years if we can.
And that's something that we missed, right? Because it wasn't there, and there were so many other things that we missed. And sometimes I'm like, wait, why have joint custody or sole custody? Wasn't really clear. So I mean, I definitely see value in having a firm actually help in putting this together in a very cohesive manner. Do we have any questions from anyone on the line before we wrap up? And I will send the slides out to everyone. Sorry, somebody had a question?
This is Nicole. I do have a question. Just a quick clarification. It's always interesting to me because, and I don't get it, with Instagram videos and like little commercials and stuff that people do to self-promote, but they use music that we all know. How do they use music legally?
You can pay for it. I'll give that one to Maria, but you can pay for the rights,
But how do you get to find the rights to that? How do you pay for that?
Are you talking about Instagram stories where you can literally go in and pick the song versus putting in the music yourself?
I think both. I think what would be the easy, if I were to do a video and I'd like the specific music for it, can you use it on Instagram?
No. You have to, unless you license it, which is a cluster of a process. You have to find the copyright owner, and if there's more than one songwriter, then you have to find each songwriter. You have to find the label who owns the actual recording. It is a huge mess. But I know that I have this YouTube channel, and I have music that I licensed from this huge library of, it's not, popular music, but it's music that you can license for that specific use, for use online. And it's like, some of them are like $20, some of them are $50, but you license them and you can use them in connection with your, internet project. So that's a good option.
All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, everyone. I will stop recording, and let me see if I can still do that. And